It's Sam, and it's been a while. I basically made 2 videos for this channel and then bowed out. Didn't mean to do that. I don't really have a good excuse except for the fact that I was in grad school and completely swamped. But I know other people who are in grad school who are able to do this whole booktube thing, so, you know, no excuse. I'm now transitioning to a normal 9-to-5 job. I'm graduating, woot woot master's degree, and I want to come back and make some more content. So why don't we get started? First up, I want to talk about Gardens of the Moon by Erikson. And if you hear noises in the background, that is either cars outside, my neighbors, or the birds that have decided to take nest outside my window. Could also be my cat, but she's cute and fluffy, so we can forgive that. If you live in a city, you will understand my plight, that there is never quiet. Gardens of the Moon. Oh, Gardens of the Moon. This book is a beast. There is no denying that it is 700 pages of beast. So I first heard about this book from an old coworker. I worked in a drugstore at the time, and this coworker and I were just chewing the fat about fantasy novels, and he said that I needed to pick up Gardens of the Moon, that it was an epic fantasy series, and if I, had started with Tolkien and I wanted to move on, then I had to start reading Erikson. I thought, okay, that sounds great. A couple weeks later, I was at my local bookstore in their used bookseller, so shout out to Brookline Booksmith, and I found this for about $5, and you really can't beat that. You could beat that, but I paid the extra $4 for mass market paperback for the convenience of instant gratification. So I picked it up, brought it home. Around September, I started reading it when I was making these videos. Got about 30 pages in, and then I put it down. It sat on my nightstand and collected dust for 7 months. Whoops. In April, I finally picked this book back up, and the rest is history. To start with the summary, this book is really hard to summarize. The plot is startlingly complex. There are a bunch of characters, and I wouldn't say that there's one main conflict. There is, but there isn't. This is going to be a mess. But basically, you have a series of characters. On one side, you basically have the Empire headed by the Empress Lysine. Also, note, the pronunciation of these characters may be wrong in these places, but in my defense, they don't exist. So, we're just going to go with it. So we have the Empress Lysine. She has this empire, the Malazan Empire, and they're taking over the continent. They're moving down the continent towards the city, Darujhistan. Darujhistan. And the citizens of Darujhistan are working to save their city and to keep it from being taken over by the Malazan Empire. The thing is, the summary I just gave isn't wrong, but it's kind of wrong because there's so much more going on in here than a simple good and bad, oppressor and the oppressed conflict. And there are so many little conflicts woven in between that it's hard to describe. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read off my phone the Goodreads summary because I feel like they're going to do a better job than I could. So I have the summary here from Goodreads, and it seems to be adapted from the back of the book, but a bit more fleshed out. So it says, the Malazan Empire simmers with discontent, bled dry by interminable warfare, bitter infighting, and bloody confrontations. Even the imperial legions, long inured to the bloodshed, yearn for some respite. Yet Empress Lysine's rule remains absolute, enforced by her dread claw assassins. For Sergeant Whiskeyjack and his squad of bridge burners, and for Tattersail, surviving cadre mage for the 2nd Legion, the aftermath of the siege of Pale should have been a time to mourn the many dead. But Darujhistan, the last of the free cities of Gambakis, yet holds out. It is to this ancient citadel that Lysine turns her predatory gaze. But it would appear that the Empire is not alone in this great game. Sinister, shadow-bound forces are gathering as the gods themselves prepare to play their hand. That's a bit more descriptive. It's not entirely clear. Again, there's still much more going on. But if you watch other reviews of Gardens of the Moon, you'll see that I am not alone in my inability to describe it, so I guess that makes me feel a little bit better. So, things I enjoyed about Gardens of the Moon. First up is Erikson's descriptions. I'm not going to say that his descriptions or his prose make the gods weep with beauty or anything like that, but he is very vivid in his descriptions, and his style is rich, which I can really appreciate, especially in a fantasy novel. Next is the humor. You wouldn't expect it from this kind of book, but there are moments where you're kind of just laughing at the characters. He tries to insert humor where he can, which I really appreciate for a book that is so dense. I also really liked the character of Krupp, and I want to take a moment to love on some Krupp, old man Krupp. He is our resident, overweight, food-loving, luxury-seeking, really intelligent and sharp, but dreamy mystery man, and he is so funny, and I love how this character is seen as like cherubic and silly and airy, but underneath that, he's running the game, and he's so smart and makes all of these like sly observations in a dream-like tone that really just catch people off guard. So I just want to love on Krupp. He's definitely my favorite character, and if I continue on with the series, I definitely want to see more about him. And even though Krupp is my favorite character, I don't want to discount the other characters that are in this book, because Erikson has a way of fleshing out really believable, lovely people. And Sergeant Whiskeyjack, Tattersail, Perrin, even Lorne, just really complex and detailed. Gotta love it. So for things I didn't enjoy so much about Gardens of the Moon, first up are the villains. And again, like I said before, this is not necessarily a black and white story. There aren't good guys and bad guys. Everyone's complex, but there are certain characters that you kind of are meant to root against. And I didn't find them particularly distasteful, which I guess in ways is good, because you want characters to be detailed and rich, and you want them to be layered. Not everyone's pure evil, but you know, Empress Lysine, we don't see as much of her as I would have liked and got a sense of her. So maybe in later books that comes up, but as of right now, I don't really know anything about her, and I feel like she's kind of the big bad that we're supposed to hate on. So I'd like to learn more. So the final thing I didn't really enjoy about Gardens of the Moon was some of the complexity. I do like complexity in my books. I like to think and try to guess at things, and there are a lot of plot twists I couldn't guess right away. Sometimes I feel like Erikson might throw in details just to be difficult, and it's a 10-book series, so a lot of these things may wrap up later on, but for this first introduction, it was just a lot, and I didn't necessarily think all of it was purposeful. Again, I will reserve judgment until I read more, but I am watching you, Erikson, and these throwaway characters better amount to something, okay? Okay. In the end, I ended up giving Gardens of the Moon by Steven Erikson 3.5 out of 5 stars. It wasn't the most amazing book I've ever read, but it was definitely entertaining, and I'm glad I read it. And I will continue with the series, but after a break, I need to cleanse my palate with some, simple 400-pagers before I dive back into the world of Whiskeyjack & Co. So thank you for letting me sit and play around with books. If you like what you see, please subscribe down in the little down bar, and I will see you next time. Have a good one. Bye.